style sheet examples and well, I've got a PNG for it. For some reason, it's not finding the directory.
For the CSS or for the JPEG?
Presumably for the CSS. I'm not entirely sure. The error we have here is null pointer exception. This is the start where I'm trying to get the CSS here. You know, conceivably, maybe it's reading the CSS and then getting a null pointer exception on the JPEG, but or this one's a PNG, but they're in the same directory. It could be I just need a subdirectory here. In any case, that's something I can come back to. What I wanted to go over next was basically the interoperability between Swing and JavaFX. And so if you have a large, you could already have a large legacy Swing application, but you want to throw some JavaFX in there. And so you want to know how to do that. And the secret here is this FX panel, and using the set scene. So we'll take an example here. Let's go ahead. Let's go back to Eclipse. So here we have basic GUI, this is actually the Swing, and then the hello world was the FX GUI. Alright, so here's the let's see what I was doing before. So, let me just switch back to this really quick. It should be faster just to navigate and open up in text editor. Check on this. See what I just made is separate. Okay, let's go back. So the stage, let me show you that. Yeah. So what it is in fact, let me bring this up on Internet Explorer. What it is, the trick here is there's something called an FX panel, which can basically take the place of a Swing J panel. And so you can stick the FX panel in there, then you set the scene to whatever FX scene you created, and you've then transplanted your FX code inside of Swing code. So what I'm doing here, I'm taking the same hello world. Instead of what we had before, I'm taking out stage here, since stage is on top of scene. And so now instead of adding a scene to our stage object, I'm returning this. I'm basically returning this scene here. I forgot we had all this. Okay, so let me show you the trick I pulled here, and you can ask me about this. So what we had before was we had two J panels before, top pane and a bottom pane. Now this top pane is what's called the JFX panel. So it does not implement. It does not extend JPanel, so you can't set one to a JPanel, but it is a component. So you can still add it to the GUI. So here, this is an FX component, but we're going ahead, and you see we're adding this FX component here. Then we're adding our regular Swing component here. So the FX component is now actually part of our Swing GUI. What I did here was most of the innards from Hello World, I left them here. The stage had to go because we're only integrating at the scene level, and I'm basically making my own extension of JFX panel in which I construct everything the way I want into that panel, and then just set the scene appropriately. So questions on that? That went by sort of quick, but
So set scene is, you inherit that? So everything comes from
yeah, Yeah, so what's the question?
Set scene just inverted.
Yeah, so if we look at the demonstration here, and I know how this works on where's the font size on Internet Explorer?
Oh, use the Control Plus.
Plus.
There you go.
Okay.
Control minus will
Okay, so the two things that are really doing it, we're creating this JFX panel, and where we used to add a regular J panel, which was a swing component, we're instead adding this FX component, and so it can get added to a frame the same way as a regular J panel. And the main thing here is that the scene needs to be set. In the FX application before, there was a stage object, and we made our scene, and everything's under the scene, and then we added our scene to the stage. Now instead of doing it that way, we're setting the scene to this JFX panel object. And so you're creating the JFX panel, and that goes into this initfx. But they create their scene, they do all this work, but basically not only do you need to create the JFX panel, add it to the JFrame, but the JFX panel needs to basically set the scene of whatever the scene is. And so I just took the same scene from the hello world and put it into the JFX panel instead, and it all goes right into a swing GUI.
Can you reverse that and add a swing set to JavaFX?
I will ask my consultant here.
Why would you ever do that?
Yeah, always going forward, but when you talk about legacy systems, usually you're going to have spots of legacy that you want to keep. Maybe they're just way too complicated to rewrite, and you want to embed that in the new system. So it becomes a black box and a white box kind of thing. So that's why I was thinking, yeah, you might have some really cool swing widgets. You don't want to do anything with them, they still work, but you want to put all kinds of FX around them.
Right, so yeah, someone went out and spent several $1 million building an FX application and realized they want a whole bunch of swing widgets in their app, and you need to figure out how to make it all work. All right.
But your assistant, I think, has an answer.
My assistant. Well, you're adding FX to swing, adding swing, and sometimes it actually is worthwhile looking at the second search result, huh?
Do they say it can be done, but are you crazy at the top?
It's okay. Looks legitimate as far as look at what an honest face this is. All right, so swing node class. Swing node. Create swing content. So set content. New J button. And
Looks like swing node.
right, so we add the swing node as a component to the we add a swing node to the pane. And if we're looking for I really ought to have that shortcut. What just have to do? Can you not know what a swing node is? That's 8.
JavaFX and swing.
Guess I'm looking at an old two. I have one. Right. Okay, so swing node, and then the function we were interested in here is basically this set content. Okay, what just happened? set ontent. That's everything. Okay, they have the same example here. Set content. Okay, there we go. And it's a J component basically. Yeah, so you put whatever widgets you want then into your Swing node, and the man with a $10 million JavaFX application can rest easy.
There you go.
Yeah, definitely a good question there.
It was interesting, it wasn't FX2, but it was an FX8.
Right.
Somebody thought about it.
Yeah, it reminds me of when Java went from 1.0 to 1.1 to 2.0, officially called 1.2, but not in many circles. 2.0 is just such a big number. And then 1.5 was actually 5.0, depending on who you talk to.
Okay, back on track.
All right, so we know how to add, we can add FX to Swing, we can add Swing to FX. And let's see, so I was going to do a little bit with some Swing animation next. What time does it officially?
We usually wrap it up around 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock?
We wanna-
Okay.
Yeah, can you get through both? The FX might be more interesting.
Right. Okay, let's. My workspace is here. So here's the other space. Let's grab this file here. Just stick this directly here. Okay.
Nice sheet.
All right. So one of the things, Swing animation. So I created an animation class. It extends JPanel, and so one of the tricks to making Swing work with as far as animation is you can you basically override the paint method of the JPanel. So every time you repaint the JPanel, you can create your own little special objects. Here I'm just creating a rectangle. You can draw images, and you can draw multiple images. If you get a more complex animation, you can have a sprite object that details position and velocity and such things. So here it's fairly simple. So we're overriding a paint method, and now we're in top pane. We're moving this back to a Swing component, and this is this animation object which overwrites the painting. So you have something simple like this. You start with these. depends which rectangular clip is referring to. This. All right, so this is just a simple demonstration of a swing animation. The trick is overriding that paint method from the J panel, and then what's driving our animation is this timer object here. 55 milliseconds, it increases a step, and we start the timer, and this refers to the actual object, which is the action listener that's going to do something every time the timer is hit. When the action is performed, well, we hit our repaint method. And you were supposed to go to the other. All right. Repaint goes into a bunch of weird stuff which eventually calls paint. And then paint. Every time I paint it, I just move things according to the velocity I want, wrap things around if I want to, and do whatever else. Questions on the swing animation?
Just curious, when you get the instead of using your face velocity, you get the timer, and say what time it is, and do something accordingly.
Say that again?
I don't know how you do it, but is it possible inside the paint method to get hold of the timer object and say, okay, what time is it now, and do something accordingly? You don't have to do it, I was wondering if you possible.
I mean, if you're just looking for a time, you can use a Java util date and get milliseconds there
Yeah,
as well.
so every time the timer goes off, you get a repeat, right?
Right.
Which means paint gets called.
Right.
Okay, so in those cases, would you then get total, or you could just keep track of which step?
Right, but I mean, I see what you mean, and conceivably, because we're dealing with graphics here, if the time is really quick, we could fall behind, and so we might do something like where it is that we're actually picking up the event here. You know, we can increment a count, and then maybe we'll only paint during certain times when we're not behind, and then we'll use that count to actually figure out how many ticks have gone by. So yeah, that would be another way of doing things if things get fast. Anything else on this? And of course, if you want to have fun, instead of having a timer, you can just have key events and move objects around and have them shoot each other, whatever you want to do with this. All right. I'm just going to go back here. This is the timeline I'm going to look at. And I think I also have this. This here. Okay, so here we have an animation application. Okay, start it going. This one, we got a little circle. It gets bigger and smaller. When it hits the height of our circle, we jump in a random direction. Start our count going the other way. we're making basically a group of objects, making a scene, using some what they have are translations. Here they're creating a circle object. With Swing, you can use the graphic stuff to draw a circle instead. There's some effects they have here. And then there's similarly we have basically a timer object, and events that take place at each increment of that. And then when the circles hit its height, you can reverse this. And again, we have our top level as the stage. The scene is underneath the stage. So, similar to Swing, it has the timer objects, and again it has FX's own stack of different objects, the stage and the scene. And here they're just doing an interclass as far as the events are being handled. Go back. It starts out with a basic stage and scene. Please. Just one's a little bit prettier.
Could you enhance on the timeline where it is in the code?
Alright, so imports, launch. Here we're making a group. And scene is created from the root. We have a number of circle objects here, 30 circles. And basically stroke types. Width. Here we have some of the translations that JavaFX uses for its animation. Yeah, it's using its timeline object here.
Could you compare that to the timeline event class timeline?
Let's go ahead and take a look at the API. So we have a constructor. We have this cycle count and auto reverse we're looking at. So what we have here is it's a few more specialized methods as far as dealing with the animation, setting the number of cycles, whether or not you're going to be automatically reversing and whatnot. So rather than necessarily having to hard code these things, at a certain time go back to this, at a certain time when this counter hits this, these are actually coded into some of the JavaFX API. See if I can lunge this FX back into a Swing application. So if we need to, we can always stick our JavaFX into some legacy code. You have $10 million that was spent 10 years ago on the Java Swing, you want to make it look a little prettier, you can throw in some JavaX components as well. So I'd say that's probably as far as the extent of my knowledge. I don't know as much yet about some of the advanced animation. What I thought was interesting here was just seeing that you could interoperate these. You can run them separately. Both NetBeans and Eclipse. JavaFX seems to work pretty well. Any questions on all this stuff? I guess I finished.
Well, very good. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I appreciate your time. Oh, let me take out my sign. It says caution. So,
what is the market for Java UIs these days? It seems like people are. I don't know who's using Java to do UI.
it's a good question.
I've been looking and I've been finding quite a few swing jobs. I always wanted to have experience with swinging it. I don't. So you kind of just shy away from it.
Well, you do now.
There you go. 5 minutes. 2 hours.
But you see some jobs on the market. There are for Swing or FX. Okay.